All right, Grandma. How are you doing today?
Good. Now that I'm with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I probably knew this already, but where were you born? Ohio, right?
Yeah, Ohio. I was born in a hospital, which my brothers were not. So it was my mother's first experience in a hospital, and it was in a big town called Akron, Ohio, and I lived in a little tiny town outside of Akron called Cuyahoga Falls, is where our home was. So my mother went to Akron to have me. And it was 4 days before the war ended, World War II ended. And there was a shortage of everything.
Wow.
Including light bulbs. And the floor that had the recovery for mothers after they'd had their babies had one light bulb in the whole floor. And I was born in the early morning, wasn't light out yet. And to make a long story short, my mother told the nurse that she felt like she was ready to have me and started pushing, and the nurse yelled at her and said, don't push, I gotta run get the doctor. And there was no light in the room, this was all in the dark. And so as the nurse was leaving, I came out, and the nurse, my mother yelled at the nurse, and the nurse came back and pushed me back in. Which isn't a good thing, because you've taken that little bit of air, and then to get pushed back into the vaginal canal, birth canal. So anyway, then I was born, and I was fine. Well, I mean, except for all the goofy ways I act. And they brought the light bulb with them. And she stayed 3 days to recover, and when they brought me to her, I had a severe birthmark all the way down my face, and some on my arm and some on my leg. And I was the only girl in the family because I had the 2 older brothers, and my mother was so sad that I would have this birthmark all my life and be different, you know, and people would look at me oddly. And so she went through the next 2 days mostly in the dark, because they wouldn't let her have the light bulb very much. So they took me home on the 3rd day, and she got me home and gave me my first bath, because they also didn't have the right equipment to do things right, like you give a baby a bath after they're newborn, and they didn't have that. So she gave me my first bath, and all of this brown stuff that was causing the look of a birthmark was just
Washed away?
Washed away. It was the birthing stuff that was left on me. Never washed. So that was a happy day. And 2 or 3 years later, we moved to a big house in the same town, but it was on the main drag. There's only one big street in the whole town, and we lived on it. And my mother and father bought a beautiful, beautiful home. It was very large, on an acre lot in the middle of town, which was unheard of, because to have an acre lot to your own home was very nice. So I grew up very well off. And my dad owned a hardware just down the street, and I loved that hardware. As soon as I was 5 or 6, I went down there to work as much as he'd let me, like dust all the nuts and bolts and all the shelves. That was my job. And we left there when I was 10. We left Ohio and moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. But in the meantime, when I was 8, my oldest brother, Gordon, got married when I was 8 years old. So he moved out, and I really didn't grow up knowing him. It'll be a lot like Finn not knowing you too well, Miles, because you're leaving home. You'll probably never really live there again for very long, maybe just to get acclimated after your mission, situated, yeah. And even at that, you're not going to be playing with Finn when you get home very much. So it'll be a lot like Finn will say, yeah, I had this wonderful big brother, but I don't really know him very well. And that's how I felt about Gordy. And then David, when we moved to Florida, he was 19. Yeah, he was 19 and I was 10. And he stayed at home to go to junior college, which they used to call community colleges, or they call community colleges now. And so I really do know David. He didn't leave home. He went to the Army for 2 years, and then he went away to college for the last 2 years to get his BS. But he also went to law school, but he stayed at home the entire time he was in law school, because the law school was right in St. Petersburg. So I really knew him. So had a wonderful education in St. Petersburg, lots of friends, lots of fun. Then I met Jay Cooper. A mutual friend of ours was getting married, and the girl asked me to be the bridesmaid, and asked Jay to be the best man. So that's pretty much how we met, except the really first time we ever met was on a date where you drive up to the restaurant, roll down your window, and they put a tray on the window, braces on the window. It's called a drive-in. And you order your hamburger, or nowadays it would be like Sonic. Mm-hmm. And we just ordered a Coke. It was Kathy who was getting married, and Jay and I, and that's the first time I'd ever met him.
Kathy Self?
No, it was Kathy Craven.
Okay. Down
in St. Pete. So we went out for a Coke date, and in downtown St. Petersburg, there's this unbelievable hill. It's called Thrill Hill. And all us teenagers would, as soon as we learned to drive, we would go down there and go as fast as we could going over this hill. And when you got to the top of it, if you're going fast enough, you would get a little
air. Yeah,
like, it would catch your breath because you were going so fast. So, you did that 50 times in a night to get a thrill. Anyway, Jay had never been to Thrill Hill, even though he lived on St. Pete Beach at the time. He was going to St. Petersburg Junior College when I met him. And so Kathy, Jay, and I went to Thrill Hill, and if you keep going over Thrill Hill and you keep going straight, you will end up kind of near a island off of St. Petersburg that is pumped up sand by man. Man made the island, pumped the sand up, and they were building houses out there. So we thought that was cool. We went out there, and there are a lot of foundations with the plumbing sticking up out of the foundation, ready to be built, the house to be built. And we're all just hanging out, and
up comes this dog out of nowhere.
scared the bazookie out of us, all three of us. And I remember I was on the foundation of this house, and it was a good 8 to 10 inches above the ground. And so when I saw the dog coming, I jumped off to run with Kathy and Jay. They were running away or running back to the car. And when I jumped off, my foot landed on a board with a nail sticking up. So the nail went through my foot. And and I didn't realize it at first.
Into your foot.
And
not through.
The board was going with me when I kept on walking. Then I realized I was in trouble. And then bless Jay, he pulled it out with all his might because it wasn't easy. And then he took me to the hospital and they cleaned it out, which, whew, put a probe up in that hole. I about hit the ceiling. And then gave me a tetanus shot because it was a rusty nail. And then a certain amount of recovery period, and then he took me home. Well, my mother had met him when he came to get me with Kathy. So she had met him, and it was just a brief meeting, nothing like, But when I got home, he had to carry me into the house because I think I threw up in his car on the way home. And it was pretty gross. And so he carries me inside, and my dad was there, and they were like, well, thank you for taking her to the hospital and taking such good care of her and bringing her home, and we're grateful to you for all you did. And I was pretty out of it. They put me on the couch, and I didn't care about anything. I was hurting and just, and so then, I don't know if it was that night or the next day, my dad says, Sharon, you brought a lot of boys home to date and have walked into this house, but you've never brought a finer young man into the house than Jay Cooper. And I thought, what? I mean, this guy is like, you go out, we're not even a date with Kathy was along, and I end up with a whole nail on my foot. I wasn't thinking that was, very impressive. So anyway, and I wasn't at all enamored with the hospital visit. So anyway, that's how we met. And then about a month later, we were standing at the altar as best man and bridesmaid. So, yeah. And then I dated him from then on, and then a year and a half later, we got married.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I did not know. I knew you met at a wedding. I didn't know the whole thing about the incident with the nail in the foot.
Yeah.
So about your children, I know you had 5, which were, I know Lana's the youngest, my dad's the second youngest, Lisa's the oldest.
Lori's
the oldest.
Then Lisa.
Then Lisa, and then Todd.
That's right.
I got one wrong.
You really didn't. You would have thought about it.
Okay.
They're all about 3 years apart.
Okay. The question I had, or the one story I always loved hearing was, y'all used to have I think it was a hamster? Was it a
guinea
hamster?
pig. Well, we had hamsters too, but you're probably thinking about Rusty Rascal.
Oh yeah, when, I'll let you tell it, but long story short, he went missing, and then...
Oh, that was a hamster. You're absolutely right. That was a hamster. It was Todd's hamster. Mm-hmm. And it was when he went missing. Mm-hmm. And the whole family was upset, including Jay, or Ponca. But Jay was in the bishopric at the time, so he went to church hours and hours earlier than we did. And that morning, the little hamster had been gone for 2 or 3 days. And without food or water, we knew, or I knew, that he was more than likely unable to survive, especially water. And Todd and all the kids were, I don't believe Lana Joy was born. I don't remember. I don't think she was. Anyway, everybody was so sad. And we kept praying. And that morning I said, well, let's just get down on our knees and ask Heavenly Father one more time to please help us find our hamster. And his name has slipped my mind. Creeper.
Oh.
Creeper 1 and Creeper 2. I don't know which one he was. But anyway, Todd was crying. I think all the girls were crying. And we offered the prayer, and each one of us said a prayer. And being a mom with the scientific background that anybody has that knows you can't go without water for very long, especially this little tiny creature, I knew that it wasn't fruitless to pray, but I knew that the odds were against us. I mean, we shouldn't, be asking for things that are probably inevitable. And so we prayed, and Todd said the most precious prayer about, please, please let us find my hamster. And we closed our prayer, and then it was time to get ready for church, and I said, oh dear, boys, you don't have your church shirts. They're in the hamper. We have to iron them before we go. And I said, Todd, go in the clothes hamper where all the clean clothes are and find your white shirt. So Todd did, and he pulled his white shirt out, to the one he was going to wear to church, and in the front pocket on the shirt was Creeper. And that was just, I mean, not...
What are the odds it's in his shirt at all?
His shirt, and the thing was still alive. And I've always used that as, not only does God answer prayers, but also performs miracles. And it was only a little kid that loved his hamster, but that meant the world to all of us, but mostly Todd. He was, oh my gosh, it was really cool. Yep.
That's awesome. So I've overheard a couple of the things you've done before you got married. One of the questions I had was, did you have a job, or I know you worked in the hardware store as a kid. What other occupations did you have before you became a full-time mom?
Yeah. As a teenager, well, before I could legally work, like somebody would hire you.
What was the legal age for working back then?
16.
Okay.
I worked for my dad and loved every minute of it. I loved his hardware. Well, he had one in Ohio, in Cuyahoga Falls, and then he had one in St. Petersburg. And I just loved working there. Well, but one summer, when I was 17, I got a job that summer before my senior year working at a donut shop. And I got paid, I don't know what it was, minimum wage back then was probably $2 or something. But one story I love to tell is I probably weighed 100 pounds back then, and I'm as tall as I am now, so I was pretty...
That much?
Yeah, 100 pounds. That's like Hannah.
Okay.
Okay, and so, but I'm shorter than she, so I had a little more curve on me. But anyway, I didn't weigh and so I had this cute little uniform that you wore when you worked for, it was called Mr. Donut.
Okay.
And I had to be there at 6 in the morning, and all these men who went to work, coffee and a donut. And you got to know these guys. They came in every day. I mean, it was just like after 2 or 3 weeks seeing the same guys, you just, hi, glad to see you. You know, how's your day going? And so there's this one guy, he was a little bit older than some of the rest. And he always got a plain donut and a black cup of coffee. So when you saw him come in the door, if you were a good waitress, you automatically went to the shelf of donuts and got his plain donut and got his hot cup of black coffee and put it down almost before he could sit down. And there's an older lady that worked there. I thought she was old. She probably wasn't. She probably 45 or 50, which is all relative. But anyway, she always waited on him. And the donut was probably 5 cents and the coffee was probably 10 back then. Or it could have been a total, I don't remember honestly, but the whole donut and coffee could have been a total of 25 cents. And then every day he would leave $1 tip.
Wow.
Now that was a lot of money back then. And very few people tipped.
In a bill.
Yeah. Or even left you a dime for a cup of coffee and a donut. I mean, you know, it's not much, so a lot of people didn't tip. Well, the lady had been working there for years, and she knew him, and she really looked forward to him coming in and her getting that $1 every day. Well, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but he started taking a liking to me, and he wanted me to get the coffee and the donut. And he kind of told her so. Well, that really hurt her feelings, and it really made her mad. And so I started getting the $1. And she never liked me after that, and she let me know that every day. She let me know that she did not like me. So that was really interesting, but I remember that as if it were yesterday. Oh, I also remember eating a lot of donuts.
I mean, you tend to eat donuts when you're at a donut shop, right?
Yeah.
I would.
Still to this day, I love donuts. And I also made donuts there. Well, I didn't make them, but I filled them. And that was so fun.
Kind of like Daylight Donuts does it?
Yes, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And I could take home a dozen every day if I wanted for free.
Wow.
So my family had donuts a lot, and anyway, that was cool. And then I worked at a dime store, which is the equivalent of Family Dollar or Dollar General, where most things are really cheap.
A dime store.
It's called a dime store.
So was that about $1, maybe?
Yeah, you could get tons of stuff for a dime in there.
Okay.
And lots and lots of stuff for $1.
What year would this have been?
This would have been
Just a...
60, 59 and 60.
Okay.
Yeah, 61 at the latest. And
1960?
Yeah.
1960.
Yeah.
So a dime was worth... Wow.
So,
let's see here.
yeah.
$1 was worth around 9. So
A dime would be worth 90 cents. No,
so yeah, like
$1.
perfect, like $1.
Yeah. 9 times its value now. So whatever you could buy for $1 now, you could buy basically for a dime back then.
That's cool.
Yeah. I remember going to the store on my bicycle because my mom didn't drive, so I did a lot of errands for her on my bike. She would send me up to the store with $1, and I would come home with a pound of ground beef, which was 50 cents, and whatever else she asked me for to get, like tomatoes, lettuce, I don't know, corn. I don't remember, but I remember going up and getting ground beef a lot, 1 pound of it.
Was there a... I'm just curious. if you were to walk into the grocery store in 1960, what was like the privilege of like dining? Like nowadays, it's like the nice cut of steak. Well, back then when you only had so many dollars to spend, and they give you and your mom gives you an extra dollar, what would you have gotten? That's like a special occasion.
As a single woman or early married?
Single woman.
Even back then, I was crazy about soda pop.
Okay.
But I drank sugar back then. And my brother, David, lived on Diet Right. It's still around. Diet Right is still
Never heard of it.
around, and you can still buy it at all the grocery stores. He lived on that. But I think I would have bought a cake.
A cake.
A ready-made cake, like from the bakery. Just because. Or a pie.
Okay.
I don't know why I say that, because my mother made the best pies and cakes in the world, but I was crazy about. I might have bought donuts. Eat grocery store donuts, because my dad loved grocery store donuts. Oh, I don't know. That's a really interesting question, what I would have done with the dollar.
And what if Ponka got a really good sale at the car shop, and then he was like, all right, I want this really good dinner, and like imagine it was when, you know, all five kids were at the dinner table. What would the kids have wanted? Like the special item with the extra money.
Were we eating at home or out?
Well, what would they have wanted if they had the choice? What's the one thing they would be going crazy for? I think my dad told me maybe buffet. I don't know.
Yeah. If we go out, it would have been buffet.
And it's all you can eat?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
If it was at home, they would have loved a good steak on the grill. They all five of them loved artichokes.
Really?
Just died for them. They all loved corn on the cob, broccoli, especially hollandaise sauce. All of them, all five of them.
Reminds me of what we have at our house once in a while.
Yeah.
It kind of explains it.
Yep.
Because my mom hadn't
had any,
even know what an artichoke was
nor
before.
hollandaise. Right.
So anyway, you told me you'd worked at a dime store.
Yep. And I was back then they called them soda jerks, but you worked behind this counter that served ice cream sundaes and root beer floats, and just if you wanted a soda pop, it was
Where you went to go get it.
Yeah. Or you could even get a little sandwich, not a hamburger, nothing cooked, but it could be like
a slider.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed that. It was fun making the banana splits and the ice cream sundaes and all that. But one day I had this idea, and I asked my boss if I could do it, and he said, that'd be great, go for it. So I blew up a bunch of balloons with helium. They had helium there. And before I blew it up, I put a little piece of paper in it that said free ice cream sundae or free root beer float or only a 10, say the root beer float costs 25 cents. Well, it would only be 10 cents if you got that balloon, that kind of thing. And he just thought that was so fun, and it would draw people in.
Advertising.
Yeah, they would think, maybe I'll get a free ice cream sundae. So I started that, and he was so impressed. We had so many people coming in to get
the Sharon Cooper balloon deal.
And then he promoted me to being a floor manager for one section. I was only 16 or maybe 17 or 18.
Wow.
He really liked me. And then the ultimate is when you got to be a cashier. That is where they trusted you. They knew you were honest.
Because that's, nowadays there's a lot of security, but I imagine back then there probably wasn't cameras everywhere, right?
There wasn't, I don't even think no.
So the person handling the money would have to be someone you trust, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was no scanning. There's
Oh, you gotta
everything.
just look at the little booklet that's listed all the prices out?
No, everything had a price.
On it, okay.
If you bought a pencil, a sticker would be on the pencil 1 cent.
Oh,
And then it was a push button cash
That's-
register,
that's cool.
like little kids sometimes have now.
It would calculate it up?
No, yes. You'd put in your money on the different keys. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you had a crank that you would pull, and then finally you could press total. But then you had to know how to make change. Well, nowadays the computer tells you how much money to give back to the person.
Or they just use a credit card.
Exactly. Well, there was no credit cards back then.
It was all cash transactions.
All cash. And my father had one of the first credit cards ever given out in America, and that was by Sears and Roebuck.
I wonder
They were the first people.
if it was more of a hassle to use that back then,
It was.
before they started rolling in and
Oh,
making
yeah.
it streamlined.
Absolutely. It was way more of a hassle. So, but I loved operating the cash register. That was so fun. But I only worked there probably 4 months because it was only in the summers. So,
Well, that sounds like an awesome summer job. You got promoted the first summer.
yeah. I think it's because of my initiative to think up ways to make the store better. Like have a sale on ice cream sundaes, He thought it was cool. He was a neat boss. Then the summer after I graduated from high school, I worked at a seafood company.
Really?
And
Like lobster, shrimp.
yep.
Interesting.
But I was the receptionist. All I did was sit at a desk and answer the phone and do the weekly paychecks. That's all I did.
So it wasn't a restaurant, it was a place for ordering
Oh,
seafood?
it was it's where the seafood comes in from the ocean. It was
Oh, so where they send it to whoever needs the seafood.
right, is where you keep the seafood and then the restaurant orders so much of it out of your company.
The middleman between the ocean and the restaurants.
You got it. Yeah, I worked there all summer.
I never knew that.
Yeah. It was just a job that I had. It paid pretty darn good. That's why I was attracted to it, but I really didn't enjoy it. It was so boring and
Just paperwork.
yeah, and answering the phone, and you hardly ever saw anybody. No one hardly ever came in. And actually the one lady that was in charge of me, I didn't get along with her. I guess she didn't like me. I put it that way.
Okay.
So it was a little bit difficult, but I made it through 4 months or 3 or whatever it was.
Another summer?
Yeah, another summer. And then I went to St. Petersburg Junior College for 2 years.
Wow.
I didn't graduate. I didn't get my AA. I got married right before I should have graduated.
So the seafood place was the last place you worked before getting married? Or was it just the last big month, at least a month job?
Yeah, I worked there when I was 18.
Okay.
Then 19 came around, and I wasn't married. I got engaged that September, so I still had all that summer, and I worked for my dad
Okay.
at the hardware.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the best thing that ever happened.
Working for your dad again?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was pretty cool. I didn't know about the seafood place, and I didn't know it was called a dime shop, but I guess
Dime store.
dime store. That makes sense.
Actually, it's called Five and Dime,
5 and dime.
which means a nickel and a dime. There's just so much you could buy there for that amount of money.
Okay. So fast forward to when your kids started leaving the house. Were there any stories about Lori or Lisa or even Todd getting married?
Yeah, well, one of the ones I remember, not about them getting married, but is Lori's was the first one that left. She was 18 and a half when she graduated, like you. She was born in January and you were born in February. So you were 18 and 4 months old when you graduated from high school. Well, she was 18 and 5 months old when she graduated. So she got into BYU, and that fall we took her out there via airplane, and we contemplated just Jay taking her, no one taking her, just putting her on an airplane, just Jay and I taking her, and we had all 5 children. You know, Lana Joy was little, but she definitely was part of our family. So we just checked to see how much airplane tickets were. We got them for $100 round trip.
Really?
Really.
That sounds really expensive for back then.
It wasn't.
It wasn't? Okay.
No, that wasn't expensive.
That was a good price back then?
That was even a good price back then, because most airplane tickets were...
Because it wasn't the 60s, it was the 70s now, right?
No, it'd be 80...
Late 80s?
Late 80s.
Okay, so...
68, 78.
Because in the 60s it was...
86.
10 times worth. Money was worth 10 times
86 inflation and all that. You could look it up, but
it was a good price in your
It was,
opinion. Okay.
because airplanes hadn't gotten efficient yet.
So it was like a luxury.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so most round trip tickets to Utah and back from games, or well, we had to go to
Were
Jacksonville.
Several
Yeah.
$100s.
Oh yeah, 2 to 3.
Okay.
And you can still fly for that today.
Oh yeah, maybe
Even
not
less.
round trip, but if it's not very far, yeah.
Right. So we decided to take everybody. And yeah, we took all 5 children, and
Wow, so that was like a good $1,000 vacation.
yeah, and we all made sure that we packed in just 1 suitcase, and you were allowed 2 free suitcases back then
Per person?
per person.
Wow.
And Lori was taking everything even the kitchen sink she was taking with her
Okay.
to school.
So
we all
had
gave 1 suitcase to her. So she had,
all the space she wanted.
hers was 2, and then her 4 siblings, and Jay and I, that's 6 more suitcases. And
That's
we
a
had
lot of suitcases.
We have this picture of her with all 8 suitcases.
Wow.
No, 7 times 2, 14 suitcases lined up.
That's a lot of suitcases.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it was still $100 with all those suitcases.
Yeah, they had no limit
didn't-
back then.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, a friend that we knew here in Gainesville who had moved out to Salt Lake and lived in Provo were gone for the summer from their Provo home, and said, you can use our home with all 5 children, and you can use our car.
Wow.
Yeah.
The trust.
No kidding. It was just, it was the
a ca-
nicest people.
A car back then is I guess cars weren't as accessible as today. Were they?
It was a van.
It's a nice big van. We went to Colorado to see
Could fit all
a
the kids?
friend. Yeah, oh yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem. And one of the saddest parts of that trip was before we went away on a little 4 or 5 day vacation to Colorado from Utah, was Lori had to get a job because we could not afford everything. We need quite a bit of help.
For college.
Yes,
So she needed to work as she studied.
exactly. So she got a job at the BYU in one of their offices.
Okay.
And I went with her to the interview, and I didn't go into the interview with her, but I went with her, and I did get to talk to the gentleman who hired her. And he was very nice, and all was set. So we go to Colorado, we get back, and we report in to her work. Oh, we gave the job to somebody else.
Oh my goodness. So did she know? She didn't even start working?
No, she never had that job. She did finally get a job, and honest to Pete, I can't remember what it was, what job she finally, not sure. I could have been working at the football games. I just don't remember.
Okay.
But
so she got one
yeah,
before you
that
got
year,
back? She got one while you were still in
I don't remember
Colorado?
that either. Yeah.
Okay, well she got one eventually.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
And everything was fine.
Okay.
But then she went the whole year, came back for that summer. She worked here in Gainesville. Then she went back in the fall of the next year. And she and I drove out together because she wanted a car out there. Mm-hmm. So we drove out together, and then I flew home. So she had a car, and then
okay.
yeah, and then in the middle of that year, his aunt got real sick, and Lori really didn't like the Utah weather. In Provo, there's more of a overcast in the winter that some people find hard to live with. Like,
She didn't see the sun for 4 months.
Really?
well,
So it was just
might be
really
little
cloudy a
drastic.
lot.
Because it was winter. So she said, I'm tired of this. I want to come home and
Be in the
so
sun.
yeah. She's a very sensitive person. And so is your Ponca. And she came home and went to school and took care of Jay's aunt. She lived with his aunt. And
Who
they,
lived upstairs from my mom.
yeah.
Okay.
She was wonderful asset to our family to do that. Yeah, and then after I think 6 months of that, she got an apartment with a bunch of girls that she still has really good fond memories of and keeps in touch with them. So it all works out, yeah. So, while she was in high school, Lori, she met a young man that was at PK Young, and they really hit it off and got very serious. And when she went to BYU, he was here at the University of Florida.
He joined the church and went on a mission.
Yeah, and he wanted to marry her. And she says, well, I really like you, but I can't marry anyone that isn't Mormon. And now we wouldn't say that. We'd say Latter-day Saint or Church of Jesus Christ. And he said, oh, okay, well, And so he started taking discussions, and he joined the church. Well, we thought, I bet he joined because of her. He wants to marry her, so in order to marry her, he had to join the church. Well, before we knew it, he says, I want to go on a mission.
Wow.
And he went to Sao Paulo, Brazil. We paid for his mission.
That's so cool.
And
Most of it.
And while he was on his mission, she met Steve and fell in love and announced their engagement in September. They got married in November, and she wrote, his name was,
A Dear John letter?
yeah, she wrote him a Dear John letter.
Wow.
Andy.
I think I heard some part of that before,
Yeah,
but that's still pretty cool to hear again.
yeah. So Steve hadn't been a member very long, and he joined not knowing Lori. I mean, I think she knew him like a person, but not ever dated him. And they were married.
Wow.
But Lisa got married first.
Okay.
Lisa got married a whole year before Lori.
6 months or 8 months.
No, it was a year. And she was only 19 when she got married.
Okay.
And
She met Wade out at BYU.
at a family
He was
home
a
evening.
senior and she was a sophomore.
or a freshman. Yeah.
Well,
And then Grant got married next, not Todd.
really?
Yeah.
So it was Lisa, Lori, my dad,
Yep.
and okay.
Yeah. You know how
I think I know that they met on St. Patrick's Day,
that was Todd.
or yeah,
Yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah. Todd.
on the
Todd no,
side.
yeah. At the Institute.
I know my parents met for the
EFY.
million
yeah.
times they told me
Yeah.
or joke to me saying, "Did you meet your wife at EFY?"
Yeah. Drive you nuts.
So yeah, they met in the rain, wrote
Yeah.
letters to each other a lot
Yeah.
while he was on his mission,
Yep.
and then I think she went down to visit y'all,
This.
and then later he went to visit them, and they calculated it up, and they only spent about 30 days together in the same
Total.
place, just like physically, before they got married,
Yep.
which is awesome. It's just
is.
a cool little fact.
It really is.
So they got married before Uncle Todd.
Yeah. And then a year later, a year and 1 month later, Todd got married.
Okay. Sweet.
Yeah. And then 5 years later,
Aunt Lana.
Aunt Lana got married. She went on a mission.
Yeah, you told me she. I forget. I know it was a Spanish-speaking mission. Or was it
That's right.
on the islands?
Yeah,
Canary.
Canary,
Canary Islands.
which is
Off
right.
the coast of Africa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me that because I was struggling in Spanish,
Yes.
and then you told me how she wasn't very good in Spanish
Oh,
either,
she
but
did
then she
know
was
4 words.
one of the best speakers fluently.
At the MTC, she
Uh-huh.
won the award.
That's amazing.
It was, and we know she's not a book or she's not a real student.
Some people learn better when they're doing it,
That's right.
or I guess it's hands-on learning.
Yeah.
And
She came home thinking in Spanish.
Oh yeah, she couldn't hardly pray. She couldn't hardly speak English. She had to really.
well, I mean, if you speak it for 2 years, don't talk to anybody who speaks English. I can see that happening.
Yeah. You
So-
learn to pray, and you're also reading
In
the
Spanish.
scriptures in Spanish.
Which I wish I could
Me
speak
too.
another language just so I could kind of understand that,
I know, me
how
too.
it feels to think in another language.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't comprehend that.
I can't either. I really can't. So
So fast forward again, all the kids have moved out, right?
okay.
I think I've been told different times where you lived. Now, I think all the kids were raised in the same one house.
Right.
And
Which we call 1622.
I think I've been there once.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
he was like pointing to this little small area where my dad slept.
Yeah, it was in a sewing room, which
Yeah.
was the floor was less than a single bed mattress.
Mm-hmm.
That's how skinny and tiny the floor was to that room.
And then there was, once you go out of that room, I think it was the biggest part of the house was, I think, the dining room and the kitchen, or I don't know, somewhere.
Yeah.
So after they moved out, did you move straight into this house, or was it a little different houses along the way?
We moved here in 98.
Okay.
And
So 5 years before I was born.
Lana was just going to the University of Florida, and she was living with a bunch of girls at 1622, our old house. So we were living here, and she had roommates and living in our old house because we've never sold it. And then a year later, or two years later, she decides to go on a mission. So everybody had left. Yeah. Does that make sense?
After, yeah, because she was the youngest.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So it was. Sorry, it wasn't really. Was it straight to this house after
Yes.
that house? Okay.
Yes.
And I know you moved out of this house temporarily for about a year into that little cute house. You all built a deck and a shed, and almost tripled its value just by living in it. That's pretty cool.
Thanks.
And then in the process, I think you got rid of a lot of stuff you didn't really need, and then moved back and renovated this beautiful kitchen.
Oh, thank you.
I think, was it Lori or Lisa who helped you
Lisa.
with the living watching room area?
Yep. She did 3 whole rooms, totally redid them.
Was one of them the cowboy room? Which is the one you sleep in?
No, she just did the foyer,
Okay.
the living room, and the dining room.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even recognize it when I got home. She asked Ponka and I to leave the house for 3 solid days. It was a little bit over 3.
I remember when y'all came back,
Yeah.
because we helped. I forget what it was with. I think it might have been with putting some things in the house.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I know your dad helped a lot and your mom. And yeah. Lori came down she lived in Jacksonville. She came down and helped. Todd helped. Grant helped a lot. Yeah. And Allison painted that out in the dining room. She painted a bunch of furniture, and your mom helped. Everybody helped. I'm sure you had to too.
The most fond memory I have of doing something in this house is I'm trying to remember. It was more recently cleaning out Ponka's. More recently cleaning out Ponka's room. And then before that, it was his office. And that mess of
Oh, it's already a mess.
Well, and now it's a bedroom.
Yeah. Right.
But then I think that mess kind of moved into his room, and then that's when we fixed, or not fixed, but helped him get rid of some junk that he didn't really need.
Right.
So that's what I remember the most.
Oh.
I also remember all the different times you would invite me over to weed your yard, or
taught you how to weed.
do little things like
Yeah.
picking up sticks, putting them in piles of 10, and you'd pay me a cent per stick I picked up, and then I would break them in half.
Did you really? I didn't know that. I want 2 cents for this stick. You were a smart little boy. Oh. Yeah. You were always helping me, always. And you were slow to take money too. I'd make you take the money because you say, "Grandma, I don't want money for helping you." And I'd say, "Well, tough, you're taking it anyway."
We still have those sort of conversations. I'm like,
Little bit.
Grandma, this is too much money.
Oh, never. Never.
All right, last couple of questions.
Okay.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'll
you.
probably do the same thing with Ponka. His might be a little bit longer than yours because he goes on and on, but any stories that you remember about any of your grandchildren that stick out and you still remember?
Well, one of them is about you.
Okay.
It was I think you know this story. You were about 2 years old, maybe 2.5. It was either April of when you turned 2, so you'd have been 2 and 2 months, or you would have been 2 and 8 months in October. Anyway, it was the general conference, but we went to church to listen to it back then.
Yeah, I remember doing that.
And that was a long time for you to sit still. You're only 2. And so I would volunteer to take you outside, not outside, out of the chapel.
Like in the foyer, and
In the
you could
foyer.
still hear it.
Yeah. And you had to go to the bathroom and, go on a drink of water and that kind of thing. So it was at the steak center, and we were walking down the hall on the kitchen side, and I said, "What's your name?" And you said, "Grant Cooper." I said, "No, honey, no, that's your daddy. What is your name?" "I am Grant Cooper." And I said, I didn't want to say Miles because that would give it away in case you'd forgotten that part or something. And I said, "No, I mean, what do people call you when they want to say your name?" And you said, "Miles Grant Cooper." And you were only 2, a little over 2 when you did that. It was hilarious.
I must have been older, but that's surprising. I knew my middle name then.
Oh yeah, I think they'd used it, and you were, in your own way at 2, you were pretty proud of that. It just came out, Grant Cooper, and then Miles Grant Cooper. I'll never forget that. And I don't know, a little bit more about you is, I just think we always had fun together. Just whatever we did, it was goofy nothing, but you and I could have fun, And, I have other stories about my other grandchildren, but really tender stories about remembering what you and I did together and watching you grow up. And one thing, when you were about 7 and 8, you had a hard time being a friend. Do you remember that?
Being a friend?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
You, at PK, a lot of people didn't like you. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And so you took it a little, anybody would be sad about that, but, your mother and I would say, well, some of the things Miles does as a young boy was causing him not to have as many friends as he could. So there was a young man in our ward that was your age or a year older, I think. Yeah, he's a year older. And I'm going to think of his name in a minute.
Do I know them?
Yeah, you did.
Costanzics?
No. His father was really tall and really thin. I'll think of it. I still keep up with him on Instagram.
Okay.
Anyway, I would have the 2 of you over together in the afternoons, and sometimes we made bath salts one time together for your Mother's Day gifts to your mom.
I remember that. I don't remember who he was though.
Yeah, I'll think of it, and then you'll remember who it was.
You sure he was older? What?
He might have been.
Was it like the kid who?
He went to Legoland with us.
Oh, was it the kid who really liked Legos? We went to his house, and you challenged him to memorize the prophets' names, and you said you would pay him money, and then he did it, and then I didn't do it, and then I felt bad.
Yeah, that was him.
I remember him.
Yeah. Well, you learned how to be a friend. You were so good to him, and he was so good to you, and you would come over and he'd say, well, I want to do this. And you had a tendency to say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. I want it my way.
I believe that.
And you learned very quickly, okay.
It's not all about me.
It's not all about you, and you wanted to do what he wanted to do. And then he was nice, and he'd say, well, let's do what you want to do. And all of a sudden, it was equal friendship. Half of it was what he wanted to do, and half of it was what you wanted to do, and a third of it was what I wanted to do, was to have crafts or something planned that both of you could do and enjoy. And then we invited him several places where you would be there, you know, he could come, and one of them was Legoland. And both,
I remember going to Legoland with you and him.
yeah,
I think he had brought a coupon or something, and then
yes,
we didn't need it, so we gave it away to other people.
that's right. And do you remember at Legoland, you and he got to do something very scientific?
Yes, we went to the robotics part.
Yes.
And they had one spot open, so we both shared, I think, a spot, and then we learned how to make these robots move.
Yes. And it was like we had to kind of not fight for the spot, but we had to say, come, you know, please let us share the spot with both my boys, you know, or something like that. I don't know, but yeah. I'd go back to Legoland in a minute. That was so fun.
Yeah,
Have you been back since then?
I have with the Oversons and their kids twice,
Okay, good.
but I still remember that first time where we did that. So
Yeah. And I remember he brought a sack lunch. And you and I ordered from this little restaurant there at Legoland, and he didn't bring, his mom didn't send enough money with him, and I could have paid for him, but he says, oh no, I'm gonna eat my sack lunch. And I just felt terrible about that, and you and I were giving him food off our tray, and yeah, I don't know why I remember that, but I do. Yeah, I will remember his name, and when I do, I'll text it to you.
Okay.
Because you'll remember it too. Then, yeah.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that, but
Yeah, you just needed somebody to play with that wasn't PK Young. I mean, you had a
yeah,
bad taste in your mouth from some of those kids. It was
Yeah.
awful.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll end it, but I just have one question you can probably answer in 10 seconds. Who's your favorite character from Attack on Titan?
Oh, wow. That is so hard to answer.
Is it one of the three main characters, or is it somebody else?
I think the mysticness of Annie, and I don't know why she stands out so much in my mind, from being crystallized and then being
Let out.
and all the transformation that she became so powerful. And I don't know if that, you know, Aaron, of course, I loved Aaron, Armin. I don't think I could, it's really hard. I love that show.
Okay. Well, I loved watching it with you, so.
Me too, Miles. I just love it. And for you to read to me, you don't know what that means. I've told a few of my friends that are my age that I have a grandson who reads these books to me, and they just can't believe it. It's so tender. And I've enjoyed that. Love it. Thank you for introducing me to it. I love you, sweetheart.
I love you too.